What's going on, guys? So this is going to be a little bit different of a video from my typical content. Today I'm going to be diving deep into my diet over the past couple of years, not just because I've seen great results from it, which I have, but because I also think it could help a lot of people who are looking to optimize, whether it's their muscle growth or their recovery, or just overall health. I think it could help them with that. Me just breaking down a little bit of my experience with this diet and the benefits that I saw from it. So I'll mainly be talking about my past 2 or 3 years of experience with a minimum of a dozen eggs a day, as well as raw dairy pretty much every day, specifically in relation to bodybuilding and hormonal health. I've gotten a lot of questions about my diet, and I figured it's probably time to break it all down. More long form video talking about the ins and outs of it and some of the science behind it. How I got into it, why I stuck with it, and then basically the results I've seen sticking with it these past 2 or 3 years. So I guess before getting into my experience with the diet, I kind of wanted to touch a little bit on how I first learned about this diet or eating this way and kind of what inspired me to start in the first place. So around like 2021, 2022, I started following a bunch of anonymous bodybuilding and health accounts on Twitter, which kind of sounds crazy, but these accounts were kind of the type to post like some unconventional diet advice that went against like the mainstream nutrition. And at the time, as I'm sure you guys already know, there was a lot of conventional health advice being pushed that myself and I know a lot of other people didn't necessarily trust or fully trust. And it kind of made me start questioning a lot of the mainstream dietary guidelines that we've been told to follow like our entire lives. And so one of the biggest red flags for me that these accounts were pointing out was the idea that eating too much red meat, dairy, and eggs would skyrocket your cholesterol and put you at a greater risk for whether it's heart disease or cancer. This was something that a lot of people and myself have been told pretty much all of our lives. But when I actually thought about it, it didn't really make much sense to me. How could unprocessed, nutrient-dense foods that humans have been consuming for thousands of years be responsible for health problems that really only became an epidemic in the last century? And why did these health issues explode at the same time that processed foods really started becoming very prevalent in Western culture as well? So just that kind of connection there didn't really add up to me, and that was kind of the main point that these accounts were hammering that really opened up my eyes to eating this way and switching from just the conventional health advice that we've been given. So once I started asking those questions, I decided to pretty much completely restructure my diet, focusing on a lot of these foods that these accounts were recommending. Some of them being, red meat, raw dairy, eggs, organ meats. I was kind of lower carb at this point, but I still was consuming carbs in potatoes, rice, fruit. I've talked about it before in some of my videos, and you've probably seen some of my meals. It wasn't just a strictly carnivore diet, but it was primarily these nutrient-dense animal foods that I restructured my diet to be consuming. And since I was naturally skinny with more of a runner's build, I was a runner pretty much all my life, soccer player. So I had that skinny build. My main goals really with this diet were kind of just to put on lean muscle, and then also just maximize my hormonal health naturally. I never really liked the idea of dirty bulking. Like pretty much every guy I knew who did it just ended up looking bloated and just worse off than what they were looking like before. And that wasn't really what I wanted for myself. So I wanted to build that size without sacrificing my definition because I was still lean. I was doing like calisthenics and stuff, but I hadn't really hit the weights hard. So I had some definition and abs, and I wanted to keep that intact, but just mainly put on that size, specifically in my upper body. And around the same time, I started reading about how basically what these accounts were talking about, consuming large amounts of cholesterol and saturated fat could optimize your testosterone production, which kind of made sense to me, considering testosterone is literally synthesized from cholesterol. It's literally the building block of a test. So if I wanted to maximize my natural potential, it kind of made sense to have my diet be made up of primarily these nutrient-dense foods. And now after 2 years on this diet, I can pretty much confidently say that I've achieved both of these goals, which I'll get into. So, what did my daily diet actually look like? Well, I'm just going to come out and say over the past like 2 or 3 years, I didn't track the exact amount of eggs or raw dairy or whatever it is that I was consuming like every single day. But I can confidently say that over the past 2 or 3 years, I've consumed at a minimum a dozen eggs a day because I would typically have for breakfast a minimum of 6 eggs, whether I was trying to bulk or cut. And then later on in the day, I would have another 6 eggs with whatever it was, my lunch or my dinner. Oftentimes, if I had 3 meals, then I would have literally eggs 3 times a day, and sometimes upwards to close to 3 dozen eggs. There'd be some meals where I literally would have a dozen eggs just because I knew the great benefits from consuming eggs, large amounts of them. But some of my go-to meals would include a 12-egg shake with raw milk and raw honey. So I'll talk about it a little bit more later in the video, but you guys probably have heard Vince Gironda and his egg shake. That's a big staple, and there definitely are some benefits to consuming raw egg yolks over cooked egg yolks, mainly in terms of cholesterol. So since I said before, cholesterol is the building block of testosterone. Cholesterol is denatured by heat. So when you're cooking your egg yolks and you're heating it up, you're actually damaging some of that cholesterol, but you don't get that when you're consuming eggs in its raw form. And it's just also easier to digest as well when you're consuming it in its raw form. If you try it, if you have like literally 8 or 10 eggs in a shake, you'll see it's just so much easier on your stomach rather than cooking them and eating them. You'll be much fuller quicker if you cook them and eat them. But for breakfast, I would usually have 6 to 10 eggs scrambled with butter, with maybe some toast or bacon. And then another staple for me was for like dinner or lunch, I would have ground beef, rice, and eggs. So that's just a mishmash of foods. I got the carbs with the rice, and then the eggs and the ground beef are just complete protein sources there. And then I also relied on the raw dairy. This is where the raw dairy comes in. Raw milk, raw yogurt, and then raw cheese as snacks throughout the day. I would typically have, when I was trying to put on size, and I found this to be very effective, I would have at least 2 to 3 glasses of raw milk a day, as well as like yogurt, either pre or post workout. And, these meals weren't really super complicated, but they pretty much provided everything I needed for recovery, to build muscle. And then it really just had me feeling amazing throughout the entire day. So after a little bit of doing it, that's why I stuck with it, was just because I was feeling good off of it. So after 2 to 3 years on this diet, what kind of results did I see? I would have to say the muscle and strength gains were definitely pretty clear to me. I'll probably throw a picture up from my running days when I was very skinny versus when I first started being consistent with this diet, and also my training versus what I look like now. And I think there's a substantial difference even from like 2 or 3 years ago, my physique, whether that was from me just locking in on the training. In my mind, I still think that even with me locking in on the training, if I was eating a different way, maybe I was like less consistent with this, or I was eating more fast food. I don't eat fast food now, but if I was eating fast food and just eating junk food, despite keeping the same training, I think I would fundamentally look different. My physique would be worse off. Maybe I wouldn't have as much muscle, or I'd be a little chubbier. But yeah, in my mind, the diet is just super important. And I think I had definitely great results from this in terms of my physique, even though there's really no way for sure to know, because 2 to 3 years ago, I started lifting seriously. So maybe I saw some noob games there. I still have a long way to go, I think, in my natural potential. But I never got my testosterone tested in 2021, which is something I wish I did. And I'm probably going to get it tested soon. But I would say my hormonal function definitely improved from this diet, just based off of my energy levels. So at that time, I had a lot of crashes throughout the day, and I was feeling tired, which isn't very normal for a 19, 20-year-old. Versus now, I pretty much have no crashes throughout the day, and I'm pretty steady in terms of my energy levels. So yeah, I would attribute that mainly to diet. Also, I think my recovery has been better as well. I've had fewer injuries. I was very injury prone when I was a runner and when I first started working out, and, less inflammation overall throughout my body. And I can really just train as hard as I want now, and I won't feel wrecked the next day, which is a huge, huge thing for me, in terms of consistently training, and getting those hard days in without having to take 2-3 days off in between each session. I would also say improvements in my mental clarity were big as well, which I would have to attribute to my blood sugar being more stable throughout the day. So less, heavy carb meals, and more so high protein, high fat, moderate to low carb, some days cycling a little higher carbs. But that's kept my mental clarity better. And again, my energy levels throughout the day have been good. So, another, I guess, difference that this diet has made is digestion. So I never really had a problem with pasteurized dairy. But, anybody who consumes dairy regularly, mostly pasteurized dairy, will tell you, like, yeah, you're going to have some gut issues from it, just because pasteurized dairy is literally toxic dairy sludge. Like, it's a dead food. All of the probiotics and enzymes are destroyed in it. So, of course, your body's going to have a harder time digesting it. And it's just going to take more of a toll on your body when your body is trying to digest it. So because of that, I would say my digestion has improved substantially, just because I'm not consuming really pasteurized dairy anymore. It's all raw dairy. And of course, they have those enzymes and probiotics active to aid my body in digesting it. So in conclusion, I guess, would I recommend this diet to everybody? I would say for most people, yeah, I definitely think it's worth it to try at least for a little bit, just to see how you feel. And it doesn't necessarily even have to include raw dairy in order for it to be effective. Unfortunately, right now, different states in the U.S. have different laws regarding raw milk. And if you don't have access to high quality grass-fed raw milk, I would say just forget about it. Don't really consume dairy at all, just because I think pasteurized dairy does more damage than it does good. It's just going to slow you down. But if you do have access to that high quality raw dairy, then I would say go for it 100%. It's just going to add to it. But if you don't, then that's okay. More so just focus on consuming more eggs and red meat. There's a reason why old school bodybuilders swore by these foods. And after doing it myself, I can say with confidence that eggs and raw dairy are definitely two of the most anabolic foods that you can consume, specifically when it comes to bodybuilding, recovery, and just getting those hard training days in. It's definitely going to aid you with that, as it has with me. So I would say that's pretty much it for this video, guys. I felt, again, more compelled to make a more longer form video just discussing this, just because it's become such an integral part of my lifestyle and training. And I know I wouldn't have had as good of results as I have had in training the past 2 or 3 years without this diet. Again, this video is more anecdotal. I did provide some nutrient facts and stuff with these foods. And I'll probably include some studies, some basic studies in the description if you're interested. But you really should always do your own research if you're skeptical about something. Specifically with diet is huge. I always talk about it whenever I'm talking about my diet, but you are what you eat. So don't take this lightly. Diet has huge implications on your health. Not that I would be worried about this diet, because I wouldn't be recommending it to you if I had health concerns with it. Actually, I think it's going to, boost your health and your lifestyle. But with everything, do your own research. And if you are interested in doing your own research, I would say start with the effects that cholesterol and saturated fat, dietary cholesterol and saturated fat, can have on your testosterone production, and how they are literally the precursor molecule to testosterone. So I would say start there, and then you can kind of just learn more about both of those foods, and kind of just the myths that we've been told all of our lives, and how these foods will cause heart disease and cancer if you consume them in large quantities, and how that's just completely BS. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Again, I'll include some links in the description. If you guys have any questions, you can drop a comment as well. And again, I think I'm also going to be making more videos kind of going in depth on certain areas, whether it's gut health or whatever else. in the future. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. And I'll catch you in the next one.